The Night HAG. We remastered it. We made some adjustments to try to fix some of the problems that I saw with this. I don't think this is a terrible stat block that's in the monster manual for 5e, so the changes are pretty minor, really, in my opinion. The armor class, I thought at 17 was a little bit high. I've dropped it down to 16. For challenge rating 5, a 15 is probably good enough. So I think that's cool. I actually dropped down the hit points from where they were. I believe it had 112 hit points on average. It's now down to 97. And of course, I would recommend using the maximum hit points, particularly with power gamers. My group are full of power gamers, so I have to use that sort of thing. Didn't change the speed. I did change the ability scores. Only one, charisma. Instead of being a 16, it is now an 18, and I gave it a +4 modifier, of course. I gave it some saving throws because it had no such thing, no saving throws whatsoever. So saving throw for dexterity, proficiency is +5, wisdom it's a +5, charisma is a +7. Deception, the number was fine for +7, was good. The problem is somehow they've miscalculated the insight and the perception and the stealth. So I adjusted them. I believe they were 6 before, now they are back to where they should be, which is a 5. You get a modifier of 2, add 3, you get 5, not 6. I have changed damage resistance very little. Cold and fire is still there, but bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks or a weapon that hasn't been silvered. So silver weapons and magical weapons can get through this damage resistance. Okay, I'm fine with that too. I've added frightened as a condition immunity because it only had charmed before. I don't think you should be able to frighten a night hag. It doesn't make sense. They're frightening themselves. Senses. It had dark vision at 120 feet. And I looked at how dark vision works, and I had a look at how true sight worked, and I think it was much better to have true sight. So it's got a true sight 120 feet. Passive perception was a 16, which is a miscalculation. It should actually be a 15, so I've remodified that. Languages is the same, challenge rating the same, proficiency is all good. Magic resistance, fine with that. I did change the DCs, which were way too low. The attack bonus is a +7, much more appropriate for a challenge rating 5 monster, frankly. And if you're playing up against challenge characters of level 5, you're going to do this. Your DC is a 15. I've made it go up from a 14 to a 15, and I think it had a 6 as its modifier. It's actually a 7 because I've pushed that up as well. Its spell repertoire was garbage, so I've kept the magic missile. I've given it shield. Sleep, I think, is a good spell. Chill touch, Eldritch Blast, Firebolt, Minor Illusion. Those are all at wills. You can do them as many times as you like. You probably shouldn't be using those spells though, people. You can do these spells twice a day each. Bestow Curse. Didn't have Bestow's Curse, now it does. Conjure Woodland Beings. I've given it that one. Counterspell. Didn't have that. Didn't have Darkness. Given it Darkness. Didn't have Fireball. Gave it that. It had Plane Shift on itself. I have no problem with that. The Ray of Enfeeblement I think is ridiculous. I gave it Polymorph instead, so it can transform itself and others into something. I gave it multi-attack with the claws because the claw attack was just, why would you even bother using it? With the claws, the attack bonus was actually spot on, surprisingly. The damage I changed. Instead of being 2d8 plus 4, it's actually 3d8. So you get an average of, instead of, I think it was 13, now it's 17. Change shape. I had no problems with change shape. I actually think change shape works perfectly fine the way it is. Although I don't really think it's like a combat feature. You really won't use it anytime you use it, it's going to be outside of combat, so it really doesn't mean anything. Nightmare Haunting has no saving throw, and the way it's written and structured I think is perfect. I don't think it needed adjustment at all, so I won't mess with it. I did change etherealness. One of the problems is that etherealness was an action to use, so you could transport yourself from the ethereal plane to the material plane, or from the material plane to the ethereal plane. But it was an action. It also stated that the hag had to have a heartstone in its possession. I've just stated that the hag does have a heartstone, and rather than if it has a heartstone. That's confusing. I've also changed it to a free action you can do once per round. It's not a bonus action. It's not a reaction. It's just a free action once per round that you can do. This allows you to travel from the ethereal plane to the material plane, cast a spell, do something, okay, and then pop back. So that should be really useful for at least mitigating some of the whack down that appears from your players as they try to beat the night hag to death. and also makes it easier for the night hag to escape and then torture them with the nightmare haunting, because that's what you really want to do, is use that nightmare haunting. And that is the night hag and how I would go about fixing it. I will put this up on Patreon for those of you who are interested, and that's me. I'm a done.